like to thank the organizers of this colorful event for the opportunity that was given to me to present some of my thoughts on academia-industry cooperation. Actually, to sum up all the previous speakers, we can look at this graph and to see how the investments in R&D and research and development, or maybe in innovation, have an effect on an influence on the profit that the commercial company makes. We can see here actually on the horizontal axis that as more as we invest in R&D, we can have potentially more profitability, or in the macroeconomic terms, we shall say more prosperity that the society can have as long as we continue to increase on R&D and innovation. But in my talk today, I won't focus on technology transfer, on incubators, intellectual property, or all those wonderful magnet programs. By the way, Professor Cornelis, I should mention that here in HIT, actually the faculty started a very similar program in several parameters to yours, so you may discuss with the Dean of Entrepreneurship that's sitting just near you. On the other side, yes. So we are here speaking about higher education. I think that in those days, in the recent decades, as a higher education institutions, higher education system around the world are facing increasing and very demanding challenges, and I would like to present some of them here. First of all, we are expected to increase and include and make our participation in higher education more inclusive and to widen access. And this all comes with the demand to decrease costs and to deal with economic crisis. The universities actually and higher education institutions take different accounts to deal with this demand. For example, we can see how inclusiveness comes into account when we're trying to earn money by technology transfer or by using our innovation to bring money back to the system. And I'll speak a bit about this. The university are also supposed to be more competitive, more market-oriented, and here we can already ask ourselves what is the main mission and vision of our higher education system. If I should refer to the historical vision of the universities to create knowledge for the sake of the society, I'm not sure that the competitive marketization of higher education actually answers this deal. If I look at the internationalization policies that are taken by the institutions, we can see actually that the universities, higher education institutions, are expected to be in the same time more locally oriented, to provide more services to the community, and in the same time to become more internationally oriented, more global, more connective, and more communicative. I think that in the state of Israel, about 65 or even a bit more % of the research in terms of academic paper published here, more than 65% are written jointly by researchers from 2 or more countries. So we do see in our research, and less maybe in Israel or in campus partner countries, less in the actual mobility of students, we can see that university becoming much more international. We are also expect to improve academic quality and academic research in terms of quality control. Here we can refer to Bologna framework and all the quality control assurance that many of the institutions are going through in those years. compatible curricula, this is also a question of compatible to what? We are talking here today about the cooperation between industry and academia, and one of the important questions that all of us are dealing with is how the curricula proposed by the universities should refer to the actual or future industry needs, what actually we should teach, what we should get from our students, and what knowledge we should provide to our students that is going later on to the industry. So I'll elaborate a bit more on that matter later. And of course, all the decentralization reforms that confront our universities with the need to be more autonomic and more self-sustained. On the other hand, we deal with more regulations maybe in times when our research is funded by external or international entities, and we need to be accountable in that matter. And of course, the concentration on research, usually, as I mentioned before, international and globally oriented, with respond to regional, national, and sub-regional needs that the universities are supposed to provide an answer for that. Of course, all of this with decreased public funding. Ilan Peled and Professor Cornelis both depicted the picture that most of the research is funded by external sources, and we are all working very hard to get enough research for our laboratories, for our groups. And the question is where exactly and what exactly the cooperation with the industry can do in this matter. So just this slide to show you that actually when we are talking about cooperation, we can see that the universities and the industrial firms confront different and sometimes, in a sense, contradicting pressures when they are coming to this act of cooperation or collaboration. As I mentioned before, the main mission of higher education institutions, maybe I shall add here historically the main mission, was to create knowledge for the sake of the knowledge and the society and the humanity, while of course industrial firms, commercial firms are looking for a profit for their stakeholders. So R&D in the university and R&D that is in its collaborative form can confront the main idea of doing research for the sake of humanity. Of course, we shall add to this confidentiality requests on front of academic freedom, the public or parish approach that we are all familiar with in the universities. The teaching, actually, is also a question whether we teach to provide our next generation of scientists, or whether we teach to provide the employees with the needed knowledge capabilities for the 21st century is one of the buzzwords that you are all familiar with. So to sum up, there are two main modes of cooperation between industry and academia, which is in teaching and then in research. As a former panelist presented the research form, I shall concentrate more on teaching and on the university sides of this equation, since the questions that we are as an academic stakeholders faced with are actually from academic or maybe even from pupil, from students' views. So in teaching, we can see that in the recent years, the employers looking for different sets of capabilities from our students, from our future graduates. If in the OECD surveys about 20, 25 years ago, we could see that the needed attributes of the graduates went along with analytical skills, a capability to concentrate, to run a project, usually individually. Those days from last year's survey, we saw that the first parameter that the employees looked in our graduates was actually creativity, meaning no matter what kind of students, graduate you are looking for, whether he or she studied philosophy or math, it doesn't really matter. The first parameter that it was accounted for was creativity, teamwork, entrepreneurial skills. And here actually is a good point that the industry and the academia can cooperate on the content and the context of the teaching material of the lecturers. We can see that industry can provide students, provide lecturers. From the Israeli point of view, we can see that at least in academic colleges, the industry is pretty well involved in creation of academic programs, of joint tracks, of internship programs, together with the academy. We can see also that sometimes the degrees or the whole institutions go through a marketization or industrialization, where the industry actually decides what to teach, what kind of programs to provide. And I think that the philosophical question maybe that we should ask ourselves is, to which extent do we actually want to allow the industry to decide what our students are going to study? And maybe to which extent do we need to prepare our students to the current job places, or maybe the future jobs that they are going to participate in? And of course, there is no accurate answer for this, but we need definitely to consider these questions when we are thinking about industry involvement in the academic affairs of the institution. In research, as was discussed here before in details, we can see involvement in technology transfer, in infrastructure services, in joint creations of spin-offs and startups in Israel. This issue is gathered into the TTO, technology transfer offices, that exist in each institution, that gives actually all the needed infrastructures and services for the individual researcher, for the individual lab, to foster technology transfer. It's usually common in engineering and natural sciences, in life sciences. I'm coming from the School of Education, so it's a bit less common there. So if you remember, the first graph that I showed you was to foster innovation in order to increase profitability. Maybe this black box that we need to open up, where we put inside some of the knowledge, some of the innovation, and we create, or supposed to create, growth, economic growth, productivity, and prosperity. I think that in the last year, at least in Israel, with all those movements towards economic justice, we can see that this black box is not totally true. So why would university create a partnership with the industry? Again, remember the first graph that I show you about the increase in the innovation as long as we increase R&D, which in turn increase profitability. With the decrease in public funding, of course, we are always looking for another sources for financial support for our mission. And now I can see definitely in Israeli higher education institutions where the money, the funds are being transferred from the research part of the university to the teaching part. So in order for us being able to continue in our goal to educate, we need to find more money, more scholarship, and more support for our students. And of course, those types of corporations can provide us the needed support. We wish usually to broaden the experience of our students and faculty. Again, in economic terms, we are looking for creating a more fruitful cooperation that will foster the employability of our graduates. From the researcher's point of view, sometimes the industry can bring inside the institution novel and usually economically valuable research projects and research problems that might be an interest for the existing faculty. A buzzword of economic regional development is also true. In Israeli case, we can see clusters of institutions going together for research collaboration. Actually, Magnet and Kamin that was presented before by Ilan Peredar exactly answers those types of problems where the industry and some of the institutions together, usually on regional basis, coming in a joint consortium to provide joint needs, whether in terms of industry answering the industry problems, or whether in terms of academy provide additional funding, solve some of the regional problems, and so on. Of course, to increase employment opportunities, which, as it was claimed before, the success of the university today is no more obligated to the number or the quality of academic papers that we are published, and even nor to the funds that we are raised. Some of the surveys, at least in Israel, rank university according to their ability to provide employment to the universities of the college graduates. So we usually can see that the incentive of those academic institutions to engage with the industry is actually to find or to become familiar in the industry and to increase the chances for employability. From the industry point of view, of course, the access to research infrastructure that are funded by the governments and are located usually in the leading research universities. To access the expertise of the academics in national sciences and in engineering, we can see more and more academics working on both sides, on industry side and on the academy side, and create a joint knowledge. Sometimes, again, innovation is actually found in the academic institutions because, as Professor Cornelis mentioned, of the chaotic nature of the research. So we are usually in universities, we are not trying to solve a specific or certain problem. We are trying to find something new, something interesting, which can be very valuable for the future technology, for the long run of the companies. Again, the industry also is looking for potential employees, just like as the academy looking for students, new and future jobs. So the question is when those collaborations will happen. We all know that, I don't know, in Israel we have 67 colleges and 7 research universities, more or less, and we know that some of those institutions are much more collaborative than the others. So we usually ask ourselves in the policymaker stand what makes those collaborations happen and why certain types of institutions are more collaborative than the others. So I can say about these two things. First of all, it's about the type of the institutions. We can see that technologically oriented institutions or even technologically oriented departments usually have much more chances to collaborate, since we are talking usually about collaborations that are in technological issues. So institutions that are more technologically oriented are usually will be more collaborative. Of course, also it's because they need more funds and more possibilities to create fruitful research collaboration. On the other hand, it's about the organizational nature, organizational character of the institutions. We can see that some institutions are actually more entrepreneurial in their action. Usually institutions that have where the department heads or the faculty heads have more autonomy, they will be more collaborative. Where the goals, the mission and vision of the institution are defined and persecuted in terms of entrepreneurial nature, they will have more collaborations. And I think that those types of collaborations can be motivated from the top-down approach. Usually it comes to the president or the head of faculty who decide that he or she wants to have more collaborative, more entrepreneurial nature of this institution, and then usually the bottom-up approaches are coming together with this top-down decision, and such collaborations are possible. Some concluding thoughts on, again, the next generation. Here in Israel, we are very concerned with the future of our students. As in other places, we are very aware of the test results on international tests as PISA and TIMSS that our pupils actually in secondary schools are getting, and we are very concerned about eventually the academic qualities of our students and our graduates, as we all know that the academic quality has high relations to the prosperity of the state, of the nation state. We are very concerned on how to educate, what to educate, what to teach, and what type of interaction, what type of engagement the industry should have inside our academic institutions. I gathered this picture on internet last night, and thank you, Shira, that you forced me to send you the presentation because it wouldn't be ready if you wouldn't exist. But you can see here maybe a picture from an Asimov famous book about the future that is happening in the 50th century, where our students are coming to this high technological center, high tech room, and all the needed knowledge is just passed to them through this ideal computer, and they are totally updated about the most recent know-how on their technology. By the way, Isaac Asimov went through this, and he said that at the age of 8, actually, each pupil has the definition of what his or she's real profession will be. So I think that we wouldn't want to have our students and our future generation to study like this. And by the way, in his book, when those who are not suited to any profession are going to these dumb houses where they actually need to read books to study, which is very old-fashioned. And you have those tapes, you can just put the whole knowledge inside. And those these dumb houses, they need to read books. And I think in this utopic book, Asimov wanted to say something to us, the real questions for us as educators, as policymakers, as higher education experts in all the involved countries and all the involved institutions is how can we create this sustainable and high-quality academic environment for our students to succeed. We need to ask ourselves what is the success to us, whether it's the best Finland-like result on PISA, or whether it is the best percentage of intellectual property that is created by our universities, or whether it is about the values and the capabilities and attitudes that our graduate will have eventually and will pass it to our next generation. So each of us will have to answer this question individually, but I think that to understand the debate and to understand that it's not a clear-cut definition of enhancing the industry academia cooperations in every price and in every situation, I think to be aware of this dilemma will help us to decide better. Some notes I also want to say that in this type of interaction, industry and academia, it's almost always, I think in every country we have the government, and we need to understand what type of policy making the government, the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Higher Education, Ministry of Infrastructure, Ministry of Industry, what attitude is the governmental stakeholders taking and in what kind of cooperation they are engaging in, because always in those types of cooperations we have a vital role of the government, and we need to understand this role, and sometimes we as universities can even alter and influence the role of the government in those interactions. So what will make the successful partnership in this environment? First of all, it's of course about well-defined objectives, about well-defined expectations. It's really, really important, as I told you, those two stakeholders are coming to this collaboration from a different and really contradictive ideological stance. So to define the role, the expectations, the outcomes is very important. Just like in project management, identification of the personnel, identification of the goals, who is doing what and when is also very important for those partnerships to succeed. Funding arrangement, actually, like always, a triangle of scope, budget, and time is important here, as always. Support and flexibility. We know that researchers are working in their chaotic environment, in their labs. We need to provide stable support and also provide the most available level of autonomy for such collaboration to succeed. Well, as I told you, publishing against commercialization. It's always about trust eventually. Just like in our personal relationships, here also in industry academic cooperation, we are working on trust, we are working with people and create respect and trust, and the other partner values is also very important. To run this partnership professionally from the beginning to the end, as written here. Communication. We are living in a global and digital world, so to communicate, to open up problems, to start a debate, and to create a trustful, again, relationship is very important. And of course, from the beginning, is better from the beginning to include resolution methods for conflicts that will definitely arise. To sum up, I hope that I gave you some of my philosophic, maybe in such a way, insight about those partnerships. They are important. It's impossible to work in this environment in a bubble without interacting with outside world and with outside stakeholders. But each of our institutions and each of our faculty members needs clearly to define to him or herself what kind of partnership we are looking for, what value it will bring to the different stakeholders involved, to the university, to the students, to the society, to the government, to the humanity at all, and how those partnerships will work in a practical matter. I'll be stay here for the questions, so thank you very much.